As we got alongside of the ship, that tender plunged. Well, you never saw anything like it.
Although the sea was perfectly calm, the tender began rocking in the most violent and inconceivable manner, throwing the passengers completely off their feet. We drew alongside the Titanic, the tender pounding against her sides with such a force that I feared she would break in half.
Keep calm, everyone! Keep calm! Make your way towards the door! Come on, Duchess, you know the way!
We waited aboard the tender for about 3 hours. We waited aboard the tender for about 3 hours. I sat next to Colonel Astor, with whom I had crossed in the spring of the year. Finally, a murmur went over the tender. Titanic sighted. And then from the huge tender that had been constructed especially for the Titanic and the Olympic, as the draft of these boats was so strong that a special tender had to be constructed, I sighted what appeared to me a 6-story house. I have a very strong recollection of a very unusual occurrence as we approached the ship. Although the sea was perfectly calm, the tender began rocking in the most violent and inconceivable manner, throwing the passengers completely off their feet. I remember remarking, "Well, a boat that will produce this uncanny upheaval in this kind of a calm sea is dangerous. I wish I were not going." We drew alongside the Titanic, the tender pounding against her sides with such a force that I feared she would break in half. The gangplank was held down by 10 men on either side as it shook and swayed in every direction. I was the last one to leave the tender, hating the idea of crossing that gangplank, and no sooner had I boarded the ship than I went below to find out if there was not a possibility of locating my luggage, as I wished to turn back. I was told that I could leave if I so desired, but my luggage would have to go on to New York. I roused Mr. Nicholas of the White Star Line and told him of my fears. He said, "All right, take another boat, but your baggage must remain." When I asked him about insurance on my baggage, he answered,
"Ridiculous. This boat is unsinkable."
"Ridiculous. This boat is unsinkable." As this was my first trip to America in many years, and all of my most precious belongings were in my trunks, I laughingly answered the baggage master, "My luggage is worth more to me than I am, so I better remain with it."
As we got alongside of the ship, that tender plunged. Well, you never saw anything like it. We sat there on the tender while the Titanic started to haul caviar, asparagus, everything you can think of in the way of food products for the return voyage. Quite a long time we sat there. Finally, we were told to go up and cross on the gangplank to the Titanic. Now that gangplank, it jumped up and down just like that. I was frightened to death. And I turned to the general manager of the White Star, and I said, I'm not going on that ship. I want to get off. He said, "Don't be silly. You're overworked." Well, I said, "Do me a favor, Mr. Martin. When you go back to Paris, insure this merchandise, will you? I've got a feeling. Oh, he said, "Don't be silly. You're just overworked. Go on. So I had this misgiving. I got on the ship, and my feeling was so strong that I wrote to my secretary, Horace Shaw, a letter, which I published which I posted rather, from Queenstown, saying that the ship was a monster, so beautiful, but it wasn't cozy, and I had this dreadful feeling that I never would arrive in America in that ship.